Hey guys, welcome to my garage. It's a little chilly out here, but I got a cool setup with my Grandpa Bill's old drafting table. Jeffrey, I'm sure you've seen it over the years in my garage. But yeah, I'm excited to go through these layout configurations today. We're going to explore lots of different options. There's some really good options in here. I think a couple we can eliminate right off the bat. I'll talk about what I think the pros and cons are of each. So settle in, grab a coffee or adult beverage, grab a snack. We are going to be here for a bit. So I think what I'll do first is I've got a stack of plans here that I'm going to go through. So I think what I'll do is just introduce you to the whole list. There's probably 10 of them, and then I'll come back and start with the existing. So we've got existing here, and I have the directions here. The Fairview house faces south generally, so it kind of follows the cardinal directions. So I'll refer to this is the west kitchen or the east kitchen. So that's why I drew that there. So we're going to start with kind of the most out there from what you currently have. So moving the opening to the west side and moving the kitchen to the east side, where your current dining room is. We'll talk about that one. We will talk about an opening in the west and keeping the kitchen where it is and keeping the dining where it is, but closing off the dining and living space. We'll talk about that one. Then we'll talk about this one, which is a little closer to what you currently have, at least with the opening, although this is a 36-inch opening here. You currently have this is a 30-inch. You currently have like a 55 to 60, I think, opening. So it would be shrinking the opening a little bit, which I think could be nice, but we can talk about all of that. And also having the kitchen right there where your current dining room is and kind of flip-flopping how you currently have it. So we'll talk about that one. This one is getting even closer to what you currently have, which is still the same opening, but still the more narrow opening, but keeping the kitchen where it is, keeping the dining room where it is. We'll talk about that one. And these are very similar to these last two. The only difference here is that I have the full opening as it currently is. So the existing opening, and we can explore the option of moving the kitchen into the space, or keeping the kitchen where it is. Grab these. Keeping the kitchen where it is, and keeping the opening where it is. This is kind of like the most close to what you currently have. So we will talk about all of those options, and then it's hard to grab. Okay, that's what she said. Too easy. The last couple we'll talk about here is a peninsula versus an island, and we'll kind of explore some options there. So these are a little more feature. We'll talk about a banquette, which I'm looking at that. I think that's how you spell it, but I have to double check that. But these are a little bit more kind of feature forward that could apply to different layouts, but I do bring them up now because they could really change the layout. So, and then I just have one blank one that looks pretty cool, and I just brought it out here to just in case I needed it. So okay, so let's start with the existing structure. We all know what the existing structure is, but just for kicks, let's kind of arrange how you currently have your space. So you kind of have your island there. Let's use this tool. Let's use the tweezers here. This will be easier. So your oven is like here. Island's over there. This is a cooktop, which can be separate from an oven, which we'll explore later. But in your instance, it's just kind of right there on top. The sink over here, and then fridge. Your dining. I don't know if that's the exact size of your dining table, but it's over there in that room. So, oops. So let's talk about this little prep, this little fun little yellow one. Prep is here because this is basically a 36-inch span of standard lower cabinets, and that's kind of like an ideal. You need some place in the kitchen where you have that for prep. It's nice to have a lot of counter space, but it's most helpful to have at least one kind of uninterrupted span of 36 inches or 3 feet. So I think for you guys, it's kind of like this. This is probably where you prep. Maybe it's It's on the island. But yeah, so we'll think a lot more about prep, and these things are so fun, aren't they? I love, especially this one. It's really hard to get it right on top of that, but that is just so fun. So this is the existing structure. Obviously, we've talked about the constraints here, and I think removing this wall is, I think, what we want to do, and it's going to open up, a ton of possibilities. So let's go through these. And this one, I want to start here because this is kind of the one, that I've explored the most, since we started this project, and I've been in the space and thought a lot about it. This is kind of what I think is the most like optimal layout, or at least what I would do if it was my house. But it's your house, so I think what I can do is kind of just show you exactly what I've been thinking. I've also done a lot of work in Figma, and I'll share my Figma board with you because the Figma is really fun, especially as we start to get these little elements and stuff, like little Figma components that are these things over here, which would be really cool. So, but I think what I'll also do in the next week or next week and beyond is explore all of these other options in the same way, because I've kind of been on this kind of narrow path focused on, changing the opening to this side and moving the kitchen into the current dining room. So coffee break, one moment. So the thing that I like about this one, let's start using some colors. This might be fun. The thing that I like about this space is, I think it started with, where did it start? I think it started with being in this space and kind of looking at the kitchen, in your current kitchen, and like, yeah, it's like very cramped. It's not ideal. Well, what if we took the wall down and you kind of keep the kitchen in the same space, and you could have cabinets in this, but you have this big opening here. And my worry was that it would be too open with this big wide opening, and this is all open. It's just kind of like this big open space. So at that point I was started to think more about like, well, what if the kitchen was on this side, and it's kind of tucked over here, and we close this wall up, and it just gives you this like really nice, counter space there, just this nice long thing. It's the only configuration that gives you, this two long spans that are uninterrupted, and there's a great window here. There is the challenge of this low window where you can't really extend the counters. We could do it, but you kind of have to have like a, something, to that kind of, it's like a little hole or like a crevice back here that you could put plants in or different things, but it's at the side of the house. I don't know if it would get great light anyway. So I don't love the option of trying to put counters on there, but I think also having this space would be great. So let's just start laying out some of this stuff. So this, I think, starts for me with the sink. Let's get my little tweezers here. This configuration, I think the vision really started right there with the sink right below this window. It's a great window. It'd be nice if it was open and you could look straight out from the sink, but that's okay. And it's kind of nice. You can look up and there's a great view of the tree. So it just sort of feels like, I think you could put a range there potentially. I don't know how it works in front of a window with venting, but I like the sink here. I've kind of been stuck on that. Oven, I've thought about here. If you have this, let's flip this over. If you have this open space, really, I should start here. I should start with this. I should really start with this picture, which is this vision for how to treat this space here with the low window. I like the idea of doing some kind of banquette or really comfy seat in there, even if it's kind of right in the kitchen. It's kind of like, if you close this off, one of the things about closing this off is it's kind of like the further you get into this kitchen, it's going to be just cozier. You're kind of just like really tucked in back here. It'd be the same in the living room. which I really like that. And I you know, as a way to handle this low window, we could do something that's like this. We could do something where, let's just draw this in there. So you got like a banquette here under the window. And then you've got this like wall to, you know, or floor to ceiling pantry. And you got on either side here. Just like this, I think it could be really nice. You could do the same, this kind of closed shelving on either side, or do drawers, or lots of different things. But having this 9-foot space, I think would be really nice. It'd be a great place for a pantry. So then kind of coming around the corner here, you know, I have to figure out the configurations. I don't want to get too far into the details here. This is going to be the most detailed layout because I've been thinking about this particular layout the most. So just FYI on that. The fridge, I kind of like the fridge right over here, just right at the end of the bathroom. Kind of build cabinets around it, or kind of build a frame of cabinets around it that goes all the way to the ceiling, kind of like this. I'll show you this picture. This is another picture from this kitchen that Kyle just did in Mount Lookout. But you could do something similar to that above the fridge, and kind of just separate just a little bit from the bathroom, which could be nice. So fridge there, sink there, maybe uppers here. I'll get to prep in a second. Maybe upper cabinets here, but it could be nice just to have this really just wide open. You know, this would be not quite 36 inches, but you know, I think it would feel nice to have just a wide open counter space there with nothing above it. Upper cabinets can be kind of imposing, I think. They're really handy, of course, but you know, if you can eliminate them, it is nice, especially under this window. You know, you could kind of, if the fridge is there and this is, you know, sort of framed in with cabinetry, you could do the same thing over here. And this is the counter. Could do the same thing over here, or even have uppers here, and kind of just figure out how to interact with this pantry over here. Sorry, there's a really poor way to write pantry. It's very cold. My fingers are very cold right now, but it's worth it. All right, so banquette here, pantry, oven. I think a separate cooktop, kind of just here-ish. You can do, the nice thing about a cooktop is you can just have regular cabinets below, you know, some big, you know, drawers, for example, just have all the pots and pans, or just think about all that. And then what was I thinking over here? I think I was just thinking about just kind of a continuation of this counter. And even if this was all open, so let's do like a side view here. So this is the banquette, pantry, you know, wall oven. So I have it. And then if this is kind of lower cabinets, and you know, like a cooktop here. You know, maybe even these could just be like a run of tall cabinets too, you know, it's kind of how I was thinking about it. You could maybe open this part up and just kind of have that, but just a nice long run there. And you know, coffee station over here. I even thought about another little sink, just a small sink right here, kind of near the coffee station. It's kind of nice just to like have a sink right by the coffee, because you're doing so much with, you're going back and forth between the sink and the coffee machine. At least I am. So anyway, just something to think about. You know, then this would be the opening into the dining room, the living room, and front door, and steps. So yeah, and it just kind of lowers there. So you could do something like that, and then have a little more open on that side. So let's talk about these other things. So, the other thing I've thought a lot about in this one that can be applied to any layout, I think, is having this little kind of island here that's like, maybe here-ish, you know, still plenty of space. Like you could almost walk straight from the oven to the sink without hitting the island. I think we could do that, kind of this luxury. It would just feel like I think this is like, let me look on my computer, 60 inches. So, you know, is that 5 feet? 5 foot span there, which would feel really nice and open, especially if there's just a comfy seat here that's like, you know, we could do little built-ins here for your coffee or for your books, or you can do storage underneath for like, I don't know, books or different things. And could just be a great place to sit and drink coffee in the morning, or a great place for the kids to hang out while somebody's doing the dishes and somebody's prepping food. Anyway, I'm getting on some tangents there, but so this is the other vision here, is to have this kind of island, this taller island. I like a butcher block. I like it, you know, kind of granite countertops are just sort of classic and hard to beat, but you could mix it up with the kind of a butcher block island. That's like, it's kind of a smaller island, you know, it once you lay it out, there's not a ton of space. It's kind of like the minimum recommended space for an island. It's about 9 feet between cabinet to cabinet. So it's a little tight for an island. So we can't really have a big island. So my thought was, you know, maybe it's like a, you know, butcher block, but almost like a table. Just something that felt just like substantial, that you could like, you could also put a stool under, and you could eat there. But it can also be a good prep space. That's where the prep comes in, because I think this option has, you know, some good prep spaces. Maybe here is great and nice, but I think you can also use this island that could serve as a good prep, that can kind of be this kind of going back and forth between these spaces. Real quick note on the triangle, kind of the triangle of the fridge and the sink and the oven. And I've done a lot of research on this, and it's something I've always heard about. You know, it's like the golden rule, I guess. But real quick, coffee break. Hold on. But I saw a recent video where the guy made, I think, a good case that the prep, it's really kind of, the prep is the other part of it. It's like the fourth part of the triangle. Like you need you're often kind of going back and forth between, you know, spaces, and like, where do you lay out plates for, you know, PB&J sandwiches or whatever, or, you know, do different things. It could be a nice, I think, especially a butcher block. Be cool. Draw some butcher block there. But anyway, I think this idea of kind of the prep and the sink and the oven, or counter space and the sink and oven, is kind of a little bit more important than even the fridge. The fridge is the one thing that everybody in the family interacts with all the time. So it's like the most important thing for the fridge is just to be easily accessible. And maybe in this layout, maybe the fridge is better like right here. That actually could be nice. You're going a lot from between the fridge and the oven. You know, and this could just be kind of cabinets that come all the way over or something. So butcher block, kind of tall table next to just a nice standard dining table in like an oak or redwood or something cool. So kind of have these wooden elements in the center, wood floor with this kind of wood oak kind of coming up. That could be nice. I don't want to get too far down that path right now. There's other things to explore, but I'm already thinking about that stuff, so I'm just telling you guys about it now. So I think in this instance too, you've got this space here where you could put the piano and a bench. I think that could be nice. You could put a little piece of furniture. You could put a bench. You know, you'd have chairs in here. You know, maybe a stool or something that's kind of tucked into that space. You could kind of store some chairs over here. This could also be like a little utility closet. I've been thinking about that ever since you mentioned a space for your kind of broom and mop and stuff. Could be a nice little utility closet that could also, you know, floor to ceiling cabinet that could also kind of, you know, not hide the bathroom, but just kind of tuck the bathroom in a little bit. But overall with this idea, I'm still keen on this. I'm still like, I don't know if I just have gone down this path so far now. I'm like so tied to it. But all that to say, I think it is a good and interesting option to consider. And I know we don't want to talk too much about the living room, but any of these, you know, whatever we do, it's going to affect the living room no matter what. Even if we keep everything where it is, but open up the kitchen and living and dining, even that's going to affect the living room because it's going to affect the overall space. This is tight. It's a tight first floor. So one of the things that I really love about about the opening here is it just kind of, you got your front door here. See, it opens there, right? I think. Got your front door here, and you can just this can just kind of become this like, this like hallway utility space. It's how you get down to the basement. And it can just kind of be this open space. And I think it makes sense for the dining to be here. It's this dining table could kind of, you could walk in the front door and look through and see the dining table right there. But I think it could still be hidden somewhat. And I think it would also make the living room, now you have this usable space to put bookshelves or anything, because we would have to come up with right now you've got the bookshelves right there. So we'd have to kind of move that storage elsewhere. So this is a good one to consider. Oh, where are we at? 25 minutes already? Wow, okay. Thanks for sticking with me. That one will be the longest one that I'll talk about. Partly because this one is just, I think we can eliminate this one right now. The west opening, so closing up the current opening, creating an opening right into what would be the kitchen. This open, and this would be dining. It's not even, I don't think it's worth considering, because at this point you have a kitchen that, like, you'd have probably just keep the sink where it is, and then have this opening, and then cabinets or refrigerator. Maybe you put the fridge here, but that's kind of like gotta go around the bathroom. It's just not. It's not it. So I think we just eliminate this one right off the bat. Okay, this one I think is interesting. This one I think is very interesting. So first, the opening. I think closing the opening would, if we want to keep the opening where it is, I think we should consider closing it, as it's going to give you, a couple feet extra wall space in the living room, which I think will make a huge difference in here, and in the kitchen. It kind of allows us to do, like, let's see if a fridge will fit in there. Yeah, it allows you to do kind of a fridge in that space. Let's just kind of lay things out. So dining can be over here. Somehow, could be like this. I'll do it like that for now. I still think sink right here. One of the nice things about this particular layout is, if we wanted to, we could have a really nice, this just really cuts right through the center line. You can just look through and see this nice window in the sink, which could be a really nice effect. And my hunch now is that this is how it originally was, because it really lines up, like a 30-inch door lines up really nicely with that space. So, and I think we could maybe just do the same thing with this one. You could do the same kind of banquette, pantry. You could really just do everything, or do something similar to the first layout I went through. Oven over here. Maybe in this instance, maybe use a traditional oven, because you're losing some wall space, but we could just keep the fridge. Actually, I like the fridge over there. Close to, it's easy access, which is nice, from the living room. You can still do an island of some sort, and dining. And yeah, just have dining over here, and same thing, piano or bench or whatever, and still even do the utility closet there. Got the prep is on the only downside to this one, I think, is that it does kind of break up the space a little bit. It breaks up, so it's kind of like, it might be a little awkward to, kind of go from, maybe we would more put the cooktop like right here, closer to the sink, or something. But it does kind of break up the space a little bit. And I think also with like a banquette and pantry, it's kind of like that's sort of breaking the space. This is sort of breaking the space. So I think that's one of the only downsides or a downside to this one, I think, is it just sort of breaks up what could be nice usable space for a kitchen, that kind of just valuable, like, wall, continuous wall. But I think this is a really good option too. I think this part in particular would feel nice. It's similar to how you currently have it, kind of, hanging out in the living room and easy access into the kitchen, into the fridge, which you don't have now. It'd be a huge improvement. And it just might require some different thinking about a banquette, or maybe we do something different here on this side because we're kind of losing some space there. I think there's a lot more to explore, but I think this is another great option. All right, so let's look at, well, real quick before I move on, I'll just reiterate with this option, I think the only downside to this one is, moving or leaving the opening where it is still, I think, kind of awkward, or not awkward, but it's not necessarily ideal, in my opinion. Maybe you guys think differently, which I think is good and fine. But you're still, I still think about doing the laundry and kind of coming up here through everything and going around back up the stairs. Maybe you don't really care about that. There's still a little bit of kind of, this is actually one of the bigger downsides to this one, I think, is the bathroom. It's kind of, let's say you're chilling in here watching the Bengals game, watching the Reds game. You want to go to the bathroom. And let's say there's an island here and a dining table. You kind of have to like go through, like, somebody who's making, either got to like go through somebody who's making dinner to get to the bathroom and around there, or got to go through like, so not a huge deal. You're used to doing that now in a way with your current setup. It's just the constraint of the bathroom. The bathroom is like, it's just awkward. But I do think there's something that feels more natural, I guess I should say, about flowing from here and just kind of right into the bathroom outside the garage. This made sense in 1925. You had the kitchen that was closed off. This made total sense because you kind of shifted, this was kind of just like the center of the kitchen, or center of the house. And the nature of having the dining room as the center of the house, you can get away with openings like this because you don't need the counter space as much. Like, it's kind of nice. It's a great dining room. I think it's a great dining room. Honestly, it's like, it's got the best windows. It's got this tall window, the biggest window on the first floor. So anyway, that is that about that one. Let's move on. Try to just go a little bit quicker here. Okay, so east opening, west kitchen. This is basically, similar to what you have now, keeping the more narrow opening, but having, maybe I won't use the chips right now, but so having the dining in here, we can think about a banquette or something. I think this could be like just like a nice wall of cabinets, lower cabinets, that you could use as storage and lots of different things. It could be like a pantry right here, tall pantry, or kind of flank it on either side with a nice table, comfy seat, banquette, or even you could put a couch, which I think is kind of a fun idea too. Just put a straight up couch, comfy couch here, far enough from the table to not be in the way. So there would still be kind of a table here. And just kind of just leave this as the dining room and kind of it's the best room in the house. It's the best space, or it's the best space in the first floor. So keep it as a dining room, keep this open, keep this open flow, and then you just have the kitchen over here. And I think the only downside, other than what I think is, other than not having the opening here versus here, one of the other downsides to this space is this is still a hard place for a kitchen, because you got your sink, I think should probably go there. You could move the sink over here, potentially. I think in this plan, you just really use this full thing as cabinets. But the challenge here is like, I guess you could, I don't know if I think the fridge is probably too wide or too awkward to go here. Maybe, the fridge couldn't go there because of the windows. So it's challenging here, because this could be counter space, or, maybe you kind of use this as a pantry in a way. You could still have an island of some sort. But you could kind of, just sort of use, like maybe if the sink is there, the cooktop's got to be here, in the oven, and fridge. So you could just sort of keep things how you have them in your current kitchen. Just, kind of keep the fridge where it is, keep the sink where it is, but just open up, this continuous wall for cabinets and storage, and over here could be other kind of storage. So you kind of got this, like, I think in this one, you come in the space and you're in the dining room. It's cozy. We got a couch in here. That's great. Whatever. Then it's kind of just like this. It's like this little sort of offset, kind of bank of cabinets that you could be kind of going back and forth from. So I think that's I think the keeping the kitchen where it is. It's there's just so many doors in the bathroom, and the exterior door. It just makes it a little bit challenging. But I do also think this is a good option. I think this can be a great option that we should consider. Okay, existing opening and east kitchen. I really just wanted to bring these up because I think in this instance, this would just really not make sense. If you keep the existing opening, then trying to put a kitchen here, it'd be tough. Maybe a peninsula, I think, could work, potentially. It could be done. I think and it could be interesting, actually, now that I draw it. But it feels like maybe not the most ideal option, just because you're losing so much space for a kitchen. You just need the space for a kitchen. So it's hard to eliminate it, and if you guys if this one strikes you, if you see this and you're like, oh, this is like one of the more interesting layouts, then definitely let me know. We should talk about it. This one, existing opening with west kitchen. This is pretty much just like how you have your house currently, except it's going to be open now. So, which, it may be tough, because if this is dining and this is kitchen, that says kitchen, by the way, dining and kitchen, and this is really open. There's no place to like sit and be quiet if something loud is happening in the living room. I think it's just like it's too open. I think you have to either close this up and put a door, or leave it. I think even just closing it to just an opening, just a standard 30-inch opening, I think would help. So again, if this one speaks to you, then let's talk about it. All right, two more, about 40 minutes. Okay. So this is a podcast. It's becoming a podcast length. So let's talk about peninsulas. So Shannon, you shared a couple of photos. These are a couple of photos that I grabbed from Pinterest. I definitely want to go through the Pinterest and go through all that in way more detail. And I think, a lot of the stuff in Pinterest is sort of finishes and colors, but there are some structural things and some layout things. So these were two peninsulas. And I think a peninsula could work. I just drew one a second ago for the other plan, but even this especially is kind of like, it's kind of what we have here. You got the sink here by the window, kind of some upper cabinets. They have a range over there, so we would have something different there. But you could wrap it kind of around the bathroom. This kind of gets tricky because you don't really want to put seats here, I don't think, right by the bathroom. You could maybe if it came out far enough. So I think that's an option. It does give you this nice space, because I think even with this option with the peninsula, you wouldn't have an island also. So I think that's an important thing to consider with the peninsula, is you would have more of just like a traditional. It's like the kitchens, the 90s kitchens, with the table and kind of the dining space over here, and the peninsula. Although in the 90s they would have had uppers right here that were just so imposing and bad. I always wanted to take those down every time I see them in like a 90s house, but no uppers there. Maybe uppers here, but you could do a peninsula like that. People could sit there. People could also sit here. This is open. You could put a piece of furniture with a record player. You have this whole span here. You can have a little coffee bar, or just other pantry. So it could actually be nice. You could maybe do a fridge. I don't know where the fridge would go. Maybe the fridge can go here-ish. I don't know. I'd have to think about the fridge, because maybe it's here too. You got kind of prep, sink. Gosh, range has got to go. Range would have to go. Whew. I don't think the range over here makes sense. It would just be too far. So one way the peninsula could work is if you move the opening over here and close this up. If you close that up, then you can have range. You can have this range right across from the sink, fridge, cabinets. You could still even do a little banquette, comfy couch, no island. The only downside here too is that this is a pretty wide space. This is going to feel like I wish this was just a little bit closer. It's not a big deal. It's not a huge space, but you're going to feel that a little bit. You're going to notice that, and just kind of like. So I think what an island does, an island kind of breaks it up. Even though it's the same amount of space, it still feels like, it is like an island. You can just kind of jump to this island, or if you've got, a hot plate or something that you want to take to the sink, you could just set it here, for a moment. So I think that is one way the peninsula could work, and just leave this a dining. You can still do your utility closet there. So I think this could be cool. I think this could work well, actually. I think this could be a good option. Peninsula could also maybe go here. And you could have kind of a longer wall here with the peninsula. Probably, I don't know, maybe just a low row of cabinets. Like maybe you could put the fridge here and the sink here in the range or something. Maybe you could do that, leave all this open. That could work too. Then you just come to the dining space, and that could be good. I think that could work. The peninsula could work. Just see how this hits you, this peninsula idea. If it's something that, yes, let's keep exploring it. I think part of the reason I haven't explored it too much is that this space is not a huge space. So in my mind, it's like it may be best just to make it feel simple and open and not have anything to break up the space. We're taking down a wall to open up the space. So yeah, I think it just could feel a little bit more, I don't know what the word is, natural or refreshing, just to have this wide open space with a beautiful floor. But if the peninsula speaks to you, then let's talk about it more. All right, last one, about 45 minutes. Okay, last one, let's talk about this banquette. And this is something that we can do, no matter what configuration, we can do, a banquette somewhere. I think it makes sense under the window over here. But I think it could be a really nice option, and it could affect some things, with the layout. So let's look at this one, for example. This is one that you shared, Shannon, on Pinterest, which is great. I love this. It's so cozy. You could do something like this, I think. Let's just say it's in this corner. We have some challenges challenging area with this corner, but we could figure it out. Have kind of a banquette. You could really kind of tuck the banquette in there and sort of do a little side here, or even go all the way. Sort of just based on what this image is, with cabinetry below. You kind of have a table here, nice big table, and just really tuck the table into that space, which could be really nice. Could be really, really nice. And then also would open up more of the kitchen. And I think this option could work either way, with either opening, with the opening here or the opening here. I think it could still work potentially, although it probably wouldn't work like this, actually, because that would mean to have this here, that means the kitchen is over here. And I think we decided that this is not a good option for the kitchen. So that probably wouldn't work. You'd have to have the opening here, and an opening into the dining room, and then do what we've been talking about with the kitchen, similar to what we've been talking about with the west kitchen. maybe that's still the sink or some kind of cabinets, or this is the sink. And in this case though too, you could just not have any cabinets over here because you've got this banquette, or maybe you have some shallow ones like a pantry or something, 12 inch, not 24 out. And then you might be able to get away with like a bigger island, which could be really nice too. I think this layout could be really great. Even some of the things I was showing you in the beginning with the kind of butcher block table next to the dining table, even in any of those options, you could replace those two things with just a long island. Similar to this, similar to what Kyle did recently in Mount Lookout. I think this is an interesting kitchen analog because it's a similar width. So this is the other view. It's a similar width as our kitchen and a narrowish island. I think this is like a 30-inch island, which is about what we would have. So it's kind of a similar, it's not the exact layout, but it's kind of a similar kind of width. And you can imagine just this kind of long island where, they've got cabinets on this side and it's open here. So this is where they're eating most meals. That could be really nice. That could be really, really nice. Even if this was wood, that could be nice. So, we can get into more of those details as we go. But yeah, I am about 49 minutes in. This has been fun. I hope you have enjoyed it as well and that you stuck with it. I think these are really important decisions that we have to make. So I think we should aim to, I don't think we have to make a decision by Friday, but we should definitely convene on Friday, talk about it, brainstorm, and try to get towards a decision by Monday, by early next week. Then next week we can start getting into more details. Let's say we're going to use this plan. Then we can start getting into more details about, okay, how will this banquette actually work, and how big of a table can we put in here, and where are we putting wall ovens, and not too much detail, but just generally like a sink is going to go here, utility closet here, because I think there's plenty of options with all of those details as well. So thanks for listening and being a part of it. Think it over, and let's talk about it Friday.